3 years ago, my cousin Rachel stole my college fund, and somehow my entire family expected me to apologize. For context, my grandparents raised me for most of my childhood. My mom struggled with addiction for years, and my dad disappeared before I could even remember him. So my grandparents basically became my parents, especially my grandfather. That man worked his entire life. Factory shifts, double overtime, weekends, everything. And ever since I was little, he kept saying the same thing. You're going to college even if I have to work until I'm 90. Eventually, he opened a savings account for me. Nothing massive, but enough to help. Everybody in the family knew about it, including Rachel. Now, Rachel was technically my cousin, but honestly, she acted more like the family celebrity. She was loud, manipulative, always causing drama, but somehow everybody defended her constantly, mostly because she cried easily, and because my Aunt Karen treated Rachel like she could do no wrong. If Rachel crashed somebody's car, it was an accident. If she got fired, her boss was jealous. If she screamed at somebody during dinner, she's just emotional. Meanwhile, if I forgot to text back for 2 hours, suddenly I was disrespectful. Anyway, the summer before college, my grandfather got sick. Really sick. Hospital visits, heart problems. The whole family suddenly started visiting constantly, including Rachel, which honestly should have been my first warning sign, because she never visited before that. Then one afternoon, my grandfather asked me to grab some papers from his desk at home. While searching, I noticed something strange. The folder holding my college account paperwork was missing. At first, I assumed my grandmother moved it, but when I asked her, she looked confused. That's when I started getting nervous. So the next morning, I went directly to the bank, and I still remember the look on the employee's face. That awkward expression people make when they already know something terrible. Apparently, the account had been emptied 3 weeks earlier, almost $30,000. Gone. I honestly thought there had to be some mistake. But then the employee asked, "Was the withdrawal authorized by Rachel?" My stomach dropped. Because somehow, Rachel had access. Turns out, while my grandfather was in the hospital, Rachel convinced my grandmother. She needed paperwork from the desk for insurance forms. Instead, she took account information, then somehow manipulated my exhausted grandmother into signing withdrawal authorization papers. By the time we realized what happened, the money was already gone. And you'd think that's where the story peaks. No, because the truly insane part came afterward. When my grandfather found out, Rachel blamed me. The second my grandfather confronted Rachel, she immediately started crying. Not normal crying either. Full performance. Shaking voice. Hyperventilating. Tears everywhere. Then she pointed directly at me and said, "He told me I could borrow it." I genuinely thought she was joking. Borrow it? It was my college fund, and I'd never spoken to her about it once. But somehow my Aunt Karen immediately backed her up. She started yelling that Rachel was under pressure and that I was being selfish for making the situation worse while my grandfather was sick. Selfish. Because apparently being angry someone stole $30,000 from me was somehow unreasonable. My grandfather looked furious. I'd honestly never seen him that angry before. He asked Rachel where the money went, and at first she refused to answer. Then eventually she admitted she used it for a down payment on a condo with her boyfriend, a boyfriend she'd known for 4 months. The room went completely silent. Then my grandmother quietly asked, "Rachel, why would you do that?" And Rachel actually rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. Then she said, "It's not like he was using it yet." I still think that might be the angriest I've ever felt in my life. But somehow things got even more ridiculous. Because instead of forcing Rachel to repay the money immediately, my Aunt Karen suggested a family compromise. According to her, I should delay college for a year so Rachel could recover financially. I actually laughed out loud. Like genuinely laughed. Because the audacity was insane. Then Karen said something I'll never forget. She said, "You're young. Rachel is trying to build a future." I remember staring at her thinking, what did she think college was for? At that point, my grandfather finally snapped. He slammed his hand on the table and told Rachel to leave the house immediately. Rachel started crying harder. Karen started screaming. My grandmother started crying too. And suddenly the entire family split into sides. Some relatives agreed Rachel stole from me. Others claimed family shouldn't destroy family over money. Which is funny because apparently that logic only applied after the money got stolen, not before. That night, Rachel posted a Facebook status saying she was being emotionally abused by toxic relatives. And somehow people actually supported her. Comments saying, "Stay strong. Protect your peace. You don't deserve this." Meanwhile, I'm sitting there wondering if I accidentally entered some alternate universe. Then 2 days later, things got worse. Because my grandfather suffered another heart episode, and Rachel blamed me for it. When my grandfather got rushed back to the hospital, Rachel immediately started telling relatives the stress was my fault. According to her, if I handled things privately, none of this would have happened, which made absolutely no sense because she stole the money. But somehow several family members started pressuring me to let it go. One uncle literally told me, "Money comes and goes. Family doesn't. Easy thing to say when it isn't your money." Then Karen called me directly. And honestly, that phone call changed everything. At first, she acted calm. Then she started guilt-tripping me. She said Rachel was depressed, that the family was falling apart, that my grandfather needed peace. Then finally, she admitted the real reason she called. Rachel and her boyfriend couldn't afford the condo payments, meaning the money was already basically gone. Karen wanted me to tell police I approved the withdrawal. I almost dropped my phone, because up until that moment, I genuinely thought they were just delusional. But no, they wanted me to help cover it up. When I refused, Karen completely switched personalities. She started screaming, calling me selfish, ungrateful. Then she said something that still makes my blood boil. She said, "Rachel deserves stability too. You've already had grandparents supporting you your whole life." That sentence honestly stunned me. Like somehow being abandoned by my parents was apparently a privilege now. After the call, I finally went to the police. And that's when the real chaos started. Because apparently Rachel didn't just steal from me. She forged signatures, which meant felony fraud. Once detectives got involved, they discovered Rachel already transferred part of the money into her boyfriend's account. And apparently he had prior fraud charges too. At that point, Karen completely lost it. She started calling relatives saying I was trying to ruin Rachel's life. Again, not Rachel ruining her own life. Me! Then relatives started contacting me nonstop. Texts, calls, Facebook messages. Some begged me to drop charges. Others accused me of being vindictive. One cousin literally wrote, "You care more about money than family," which was hilarious because apparently nobody cared about family while Rachel was stealing from mine. Then my grandfather finally heard about the police report, and instead of getting angry at me, he apologized. That honestly hurt worse than the theft itself, because the man spent his entire life protecting me, and now he felt guilty for being manipulated. Then 3 weeks later, police arrested Rachel at her condo, and somehow, my family blamed me for that too. The day Rachel got arrested, my phone exploded. Calls, voicemails, messages. You'd think I personally kicked down the condo door myself. Karen left me a voicemail screaming that I destroyed Rachel's future. Again, not Rachel, me. Meanwhile, detectives later told us Rachel tried deleting financial records before officers arrived, which definitely didn't make her look innocent. Then came the court hearings. And honestly, I thought reality would finally hit my family once they saw actual evidence. Nope. Karen somehow turned the entire thing into a pity campaign. According to her, Rachel was a young woman who made one mistake. One mistake. $30,000, forged signatures, fraud, and attempted evidence destruction. Apparently, all of that counted as one mistake. Then Rachel herself spoke during one hearing, and somehow she made everything even worse. Instead of apologizing, she claimed she fully intended to repay the money eventually. With what money? Nobody knew. Because during the investigation, police discovered Rachel hadn't worked consistently in almost 2 years. Her boyfriend apparently lost his job too, and the condo was already close to foreclosure, meaning they basically stole my future to pretend they had a successful life online. That realization made me furious, because Rachel constantly posted motivational quotes about working hard, while secretly funding everything with stolen money. Eventually, my grandfather testified, and the entire courtroom went silent. He explained exactly how Rachel manipulated my grandmother while he was hospitalized. Then he looked directly at Rachel and said, "I trusted you." That was honestly the first time Rachel looked genuinely ashamed. For about 5 seconds. Then Karen started crying loudly again. The judge eventually ordered restitution payments and probation instead of prison because Rachel had no prior convictions, which honestly made half the family celebrate like she won the lottery. Meanwhile, I was sitting there realizing I still might never recover most of the money. Then came the final insult. Karen asked if I could help Rachel get back on her feet after court. I genuinely thought she was joking. She wasn't. After court, Karen cornered me in the parking lot, still crying, still acting like Rachel was the victim. Then she asked if Rachel could temporarily stay with my grandparents, because she had nowhere else to go. I just stared at her, because Rachel literally stole from the same people she now needed help from. But somehow Karen kept talking like this was my responsibility to fix. That's when my grandfather finally stepped in. And honestly, I'll never forget what he said. He looked directly at Karen and told her, "You created this." Complete silence. Then he said, "Every lie, every excuse. Every time you protected her from consequences, you created this." Karen immediately started screaming that everyone was ganging up on Rachel. But for the first time, nobody defended her, not even relatives who supported Rachel earlier, because by that point the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forgery, texts, everything. Then another truth came out. Apparently Rachel borrowed money from multiple relatives over the years and never repaid any of it. Small amounts mostly. 200 here. 500 there. Enough that nobody pushed too hard. But once people started comparing stories, everyone realized the pattern. Rachel had been manipulating the family for years, and Karen defended her every single time. That's when my aunt suddenly switched tactics. Instead of denying everything, she started blaming mental health. Now Rachel supposedly had anxiety, depression, emotional instability, which honestly would have been easier to sympathize with if they hadn't spent months attacking Emmy first. Then came Thanksgiving. Absolute disaster. Rachel showed up unexpectedly despite being specifically told not to, and somehow within 20 minutes she started another argument. She accused me of turning the family against her. I asked one question, "Did you or did you not steal the money?" And instead of answering, she started crying again. At that point, my grandfather quietly stood up and walked out of the room. That hurt more than the yelling, because he looked exhausted, like the entire family drama finally broke him emotionally. A week later, he changed his will, and when Rachel found out she'd been removed entirely, she completely lost control. The day Rachel learned she'd been removed from the will, she showed up at my grandparents' house screaming. Not exaggerating, actual screaming. Neighbors came outside. She kept yelling that I brainwashed my grandfather. Meanwhile, Karen stood beside her crying, dramatically like they were being thrown out into the street. Then Rachel started demanding money again. Actual money. She claimed she needed help making restitution payments ordered by the court. The irony was unbelievable. She stole money, got caught, then demanded more money to recover from stealing the first money. At one point, she started banging on the front door, yelling, "You owe me after ruining my life." That sentence still doesn't feel real. My grandfather finally opened the door, and for the first time in my entire life, he looked disappointed instead of angry. Honestly, that was worse. He told Rachel she wasn't welcome there anymore. Then he said, "You stopped being family the moment you decided we were people to use." Rachel immediately started sobbing, but nobody moved. Nobody comforted her, because at that point everybody finally understood the pattern. The crying only started after consequences appeared. Then Karen accused my grandfather of abandoning Rachel, which was insane considering Rachel literally stole from him while he was hospitalized. Eventually, neighbors threatened to call police. That's when Rachel finally left. But before getting in the car, she looked directly at me and said, "I hope you're happy." And honestly, that sentence bothered me for weeks. Not because I felt guilty, but because she genuinely believed I caused all of this. Like somewhere in her mind, she was still the victim. Then things got even more pathetic. Apparently, Rachel started posting vague TikToks about betrayal and toxic families. And people online supported her because obviously they only heard her version. No mention of fraud. No mention of stolen college money. Just dramatic music and fake crying. Then finally, almost a year later, karma hit properly. Rachel's boyfriend left. The condo got repossessed. And Karen suddenly stopped defending everything so loudly. Probably because reality finally became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, I eventually got financial aid and still managed to start college. But I had to work 2 jobs while studying because most of the stolen money was never recovered. And honestly, that's the part that still makes me angry. Not the betrayal, not the family drama. The fact that somebody could destroy years of your future in one selfish decision. It's been about 3 years now, and to this day, family gatherings still feel weird. Rachel barely shows up anymore. Karen only talks to half the family. And my grandparents aged hard after everything happened, especially my grandfather. I think the betrayal genuinely broke something in him. Not financially, emotionally. Because he spent his entire life believing family would protect each other. Then one of his own relatives manipulated him in a hospital bed. That changes a person. The craziest part is that Rachel still refuses to fully admit what she did. According to relatives who still speak to her, she claims the whole situation was misunderstood. Misunderstood, as if $30,000 accidentally walked itself into her condo down payment. Sometimes I replay the whole thing in my head, and honestly, the theft itself wasn't even the worst part. It was watching people twist reality to protect someone clearly in the wrong that messes with your brain, especially when family members start acting like you are cruel for reacting normally. For a while, I genuinely questioned myself. I kept wondering, am I being too harsh? Then I'd remember Rachel literally stole my future while my grandfather was in the hospital, and suddenly the guilt disappeared. The weirdest lesson from all this is realizing some people confuse forgiveness with permission. My family spent years excusing Rachel's behavior because confronting her was uncomfortable. Every lie got minimized. Every selfish decision became somebody else's fault. And eventually she learned consequences weren't real until they finally were. Last Christmas, my grandfather gave me something that honestly almost made me cry. It was the original empty bank folder, the same one Rachel stole paperwork from. Inside was a note, written by him. It said, "I'm sorry the world got harder before you were ready, but I'm proud you stayed honest anyway." I still keep that note in my apartment, because after everything that happened, that note mattered more than the money. And honestly, if there's one thing I learned from this whole disaster, it's this. The people who constantly demand family loyalty are usually the same people who never show loyalty themselves. They just expect immunity from consequences. And the second accountability finally shows up, suddenly you become the villain. So yeah, that's the story of how my cousin stole my college fund, blamed me for it, and somehow convinced half the family I was the bad guy. And honestly, I still don't think she fully understands why nobody trusts her anymore.